Before we start the video, this video is not made for kids. It's for older fans of the show and adults only, and contains more profanity than usual due to the appearance of a certain Scottish narrow gauge engine. So enjoy the video! Road Roller. One evening, Rheneas arrived in the shed with bad news. Whoa. You won't believe it.
What won't we believe?
Asked Skarloey. George the Steamroller is working up near Lakeside. Just after I passed by, he called me an orange sausage on wheels. The little engines were not too happy, but Sir Handel took a different approach. Pah! What does that steamroller know? He tried us before and came to regret it. Especially me. Just ask me.
Now, Sir Handel,
said Skarloey,
we will not have you dealing with that steamroller.
Sir Handel just scoffed. You don't understand. Duke cut in.
Now, Falcon. Don't be trying to play smug with a situation that is dangerous.
Sir Handel did not reply. Then Duncan came forward. Leave it to me. I'll teach that bastard roller a lesson. Skarloey wasn't impressed.
No, neither will you. You're asking for trouble.
Pah! Scoffed Duncan. Whatever you say, I will put him in his place. The other engines looked at Duncan scornfully, except for Sir Handel. Heh! Saw that roller bastard what for?
What did I say?
Reminded Duke. Can it, Grandpuff? Retorted Sir Handel. Peter Sam didn't like what he had heard. Don't speak to Grandpuff like that. Sir Handel didn't say anything else. Nor did Duncan. The next day, George was working around Lakeside, ranting as usual. Railways are no good, pull 'em up, turn 'em into roads, pull 'em up, turn 'em into roads. Duncan rolled into view as George was waiting at the crossing, crossly. Oi, you, he said, big green hippopotamus. Will you do us a favour and fuck off? Duncan left as quickly as he came. Oi, tosser! I have a job to do here, retorted George. But Duncan didn't hear him. He was determined to show George what for. George just grunted and went back to his work. Duncan went over to Lakeside where he met Skarloey. Hey, he boasted. I told that big green hippopotamus to fuck off. That should see him sorted. Skarloey wasn't impressed.
Oh, Duncan, you've just kicked the hornet's nest by doing that,
he said sternly.
And as I said last night, trying to confront George is asking for trouble.
Pah! Nothing to it. He won't dare get back at me. Duncan began throwing insults at George when he passed by. Green wanker! Rolling pin! Swat on the rollers! Fuck you! Smelly pile of green shit! Peter Sam was in earshot. You were not talking about me, Duncan, were you? No, you daft wanker! George, meanwhile, was thinking of a way to get back at Duncan for his insults. And he did. George was working by the level crossing resurfacing the road when he heard Duncan pass by with the empties to the slate quarry. "Piss off, green booger!
Or have you?"
said George crossly.
"Mark my words."
And George did. He knew that Duncan would be returning on the same track. When he heard Duncan's whistle in the distance again, he sprung into action. He rolled onto the track, damaging it. Then he left the scene quickly. Duncan didn't notice until he was just meters from the damaged track. And sure enough, he came off the rails onto the road. "Sleepers and bullets! I'm fucked!" And he was. Rusty was elsewhere, so it was Duke who came to Duncan's aid. He had few disapproving words for Duncan.
"That would never suit his grace, Duncan. You should know better than going after steamrollers."
"What's it to you?" said Duncan sharply.
"All I am saying," replied Joe, "is what happens and what Skarloey said when you were asking for trouble. May I remind you about the story of Smudger?"
"Just get me back on the rails," said Duncan crossly.
"Fair enough, you impertinent scallywag."
So when Duncan was back on the rails, Duke took him back to the sheds. And it was up to Peter Sam to take Duncan's slate trucks after a temporary fix had been done to the rails. "Why do I always have to pick up the slack from Duncan for going after a steamroller?" Rusty would attend to permanent track repairs the next day. A few days later, Skarloey was waiting at Crovenskid when he heard a diesel rolling in. It was Mark, the Welsh Class 47 who worked on the island during the heatwave 8 years prior. He was delivering fuel from the mainland.
"Greetings, Skarloey."
Why the long face?" asked Mark. Skarloey sighed.
"That steamroller." What steamroller?"
asked Mark. Skarloey explained everything about George and what he did.
"Oh, goodness me,"
gasped Mark.
"Really doesn't like the railways. Reminds me of when I had a near miss with a lorry near Llanelli 4 years ago. Anyway," he continued, "here's your fuel. I am heading towards Knapford. Best of luck with that roller. I think you need it."
Skarloey smiled, but thankfully George was finishing at Lakeside and on his way home. There was trouble for Mark up ahead. George was rolling towards a rail crossing, with all the insults that Duncan threw at him whirling around in his boiler. Then it happened. George went rogue, barged through the crossing and blocked both tracks. "Oi!" said the signalman. "Get off the track!"
"Railways are no good,"
ranted George.
"Pull them up, turn them into roads, down with railways, turn them into roads, fuck them all, turn them into roads!"
George's driver was in shock. "What are you doing? Get off the rails!" Then Mark's horn echoed in the distance. George's driver then jumped clear. When Mark came into view, "No, not this again!" Ow! Mark's engine went into emergency shutdown after he came off the rails. His buffers were bent and he was shaken, but his tankers remained on the rails. George, however, took the brunt of the impact and lay in a bush next to the track.
Ah, my fucking roller of fuck.
The Fat Controller had some stern words for George.
It is what happens when you mess with the railways, George. I hope the state that you are in will teach you a lesson not to play boss with railways and get those anti-railway views out of you. It'll be some time before you're repaired. More than enough time for you to think.
George said nothing. The Fat Controller then turned to Mark.
The other railway and Cardiff Canton have agreed for you to be repaired at my works at Crovan's Gate, he said kindly. It should hopefully not be too much of a big job. This is another thank you for helping us 8 years ago during that heat wave.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, said Mark. Murdoch took the fuel onto Knapford, while Henry took Mark onto the works. When he arrived at the works, he saw Skarloey in for a little checkup.
What happened here?
asked Skarloey.
Oh, that steamroller,
replied Mark.
But thankfully,
said Henry,
he won't be disturbing us engines for a good while. I would like to think it serves him right, said Mark.
Exactly, replied Skarloey.
Let's enjoy the peace while it lasts.
As Mark was seen to, George lay damaged for months until he could be repaired. Whether he changed his ways was another matter, but the engines could enjoy the peace while it lasted.